Why should we not use sys.setdefaultencoding utf-8 in a Pi script? I have seen few Pi scripts which use this at the top of the script. In what cases one should use it?
As per the documentation, this allows you to switch from the default ASCII to other encodings such as utf-8, which the Python runtime will use whenever it has to decode a string buffer to Unicode. This function is only available at Python startup time, when Python scans the environment. It has to be called in a system-wide module, sys.customize.py. After this module has been evaluated, the setDefaultEncoding function is removed from the sys module. The only way to actually use it is with a reload hack that brings the attribute back. Also, the use of sys.setDefaultEncoding has always been discouraged, and it has become a no-op in PyEC. The encoding of PyEC is hardwired to utf-8 and changing it raises an error. I suggest some pointers for reading. This URL, this URL, this URL, this URL, this URL.
TL, drive. The answer is never. Unless you really know what you're doing. 9/10 times the solution can be resolved with a proper understanding of encoding/decoding. 1/10 people have an incorrectly defined locale or environment and need to set in their environment to fix console printing problems. What does it do? Sys.setDefaultEncoding utf-8, struck through to avoid reuse, changes the default encoding/decoding used whenever Python 2.x needs to convert a Unicode to a STR, and vice versa, and the encoding is not given. I.e., in Python 2.x, the default encoding is set to ASCII and the above examples will fail with my console is configured as utf-8, so euro equals /z2 /x82 hence exception on /z2. Or sys.setDefaultEncoding utf-8 will allow these to work for me, but won't necessarily work for people who don't use utf-8. The default of ASCII ensures that assumptions of encoding are not baked into code. Console. Sys.setDefaultEncoding utf-8 also has a side effect of appearing to fix sys.stout.encoding, used when printing characters to the console. Python uses the user's locale, Linux/OS/X/UNX, or code page, Windows, to set this. Occasionally, a user's locale is broken and just requires Pythono encoding to fix the console encoding. Example. What's so bad with sys.setDefaultEncoding utf-8? People have been developing against Python 2.x for 16 years on the understanding that the default encoding is ASCII. Unicode-error exception handling methods have been written to handle string to Unicode conversions on strings that are found to contain non-ASCII. From this URL. Previous to setting default encoding, this code would be unable to decode the A ring in the ASCII encoding and then would enter the exception handler to guess the encoding and properly turn it into Unicode. Printing, angstrom, A ring, runs your business. Once you've set the default encoding to UTF-8, the code will find that the byte_string can be interpreted as UTF-8, and so it will mangle the data and return this instead. Angstrom, U, runs your business. Changing what should be a constant will have dramatic effects on modules you depend upon. It's better to just fix the data coming in and out of your code. Example problem. While the setting of default encoding to UTF-8 isn't the root cause in the following example, it shows how problems are masked and how, when the input encoding changes, the code breaks in an unobvious way. Unicode decode error, utf-8 codec can't decode byte 0 by 80 in position 3131, invalid start byte.
On shell works, sending to stout not, so that is one workaround, to write to stout. I made other approach, which is not run if sys.setdefaultencoding is not defined, or in others words, need export Python encoding equals UTF-8 first to write to stout. So, using same example. Will work.
The first danger lies in reload sys. When you reload a module, you actually get two copies of the module in your runtime. The old module is a Python object like everything else, and stays alive as long as there are references to it. So, half of the objects will be pointing to the old module, and half to the new one. When you make some change, you will never see it coming when some random object doesn't see the change. Now, sys.setdefaultencoding proper. All that it affects is implicit conversion str, Unicode. Now, UTF-8 is the sanest encoding on the planet, backward compatible with ASCII and all. The conversion now just works. What could possibly go wrong? Well, anything. And that is the danger. There may be some code that relies on the unicode error being thrown for non-ASCII input, or does the transcoding with an error handler, which now produces an unexpected result. And since all code is tested with the default setting, you're strictly on unsupported territory here, and no one gives you guarantees about how their code will behave. The transcoding may produce unexpected or unusable results if not everything on the system uses UTF-8 because Python 2 actually has multiple independent default string encodings. Remember, a program must work for the customer, on the customer's equipment. Again, the worst thing is you will never know that because the conversion is implicit, you don't really know when and where it happens. Python Zen, koan tu ahoy, you will never know why, and if, your code works on one system and breaks on another. Or better yet, works in IDE and breaks in console.